Good morning. Thank you for coming to another Meet the Masters event. This is how to scale your venture with none other than Ted Kellner. We're going to just jump straight into it after a few commercial announcements. First being, it's the time of the year that we are recruiting for our world-famous Accelerator program, formerly called the Scalerator, now called the Scale Up Milwaukee Growth Accelerator. This is an incredible opportunity for businesses with revenues roughly 1 million to 10 million in revenue to learn how to grow more profitably, more rapidly, and so on. So if you have companies that you think would be a good fit, please send them our way or send them directly to the application. We've got some alum in the room, and I'm sure they would attest to the quality and the helpfulness of the experience. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we've got a Scale Up Milwaukee members meeting next week. If you haven't registered, I recommend that you do. We're going to be featuring a guy named Noah, whose last name just Ricken. Thank you so much. Noah Ricken from E2E Reman. This is an incredible company. Noah's going to be talking about sales. And if you've ever met someone who's just got a natural capacity for sales, Noah is that guy manifest. So he's going to be talking about some actionable strategies to really inject some fuel into your top line. And that's all of our announcements. Please do the evaluation before you leave. Feel free to tweet and send whatever videos and pictures you want onto the social media accounts. Please tag Scale Up Milwaukee, and that's it. This is meant to be a conversation, so when you have questions, please just let me know, and we're just going to learn as much as we can from Ted. You ready? All right. I should always mention, good morning, my name is Elmer Moore. I'm the Executive Director of Scale Up Milwaukee. This is an initiative of the Greater Milwaukee Committee, which is focused on using entrepreneurial growth to generate inclusive economic prosperity in Wisconsin. And how we do that in this series is to talk to someone who's grown a great and large company. This morning we have Ted Kellner, who is co-founder of Fiduciary Management, Inc., as well as a number of other enterprises, which we'll discuss. Good morning, Ted.
Elmer, good morning. Good to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. You know, when we first came up with the idea of Meet the Masters and we drafted the list, you were actually in the top 3. So here we are. This is the 11th or 12th one we've done, and we finally nailed you.
So I hope it's worthwhile for the folks that are assembled here.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. So let's start at the beginning. What we know about you is that you are an incredibly passionate Badger. You're a passionate sports fan. You're the founder of an asset management firm. But tell me about Ted as a high school student.
As a high school student?
Yeah.
Well, I was an okay high school student. I describe myself as more of a grinder than I was a good student, but I enjoyed, you mentioned sports, I enjoyed sports. I think I spent a lot, and that taught you a lot about business. I think one of the things when Elmer asked me to do this, they talk about one of the toughest things, and not the toughest, but a difficult thing, and that sports helps you tremendously, is dealing with building teams, teamwork, camaraderie. It teaches you about rejection. I mean, one of the things I can tell, if we tell stories about your business, and all of you, I know many of you deal with, are in businesses, that one of the toughest things to do is deal with rejection, and i.e. sports teaches you how to lose, to be a gracious loser, but to get back up and get back in the game. And I think a lot of people, as I've seen businesses, I spent at Fiduciary Management 50 years analyzing businesses. I think many of the most successful people had some form of competitive background that taught them those skills. I mean, a lot of people, if you don't have success right away or you have they don't get back up and get in the game, and those aren't the kind of people long-term that are successful. So I think sports was a big part of my life, and dealing with that, the commentary about teams and teamwork and getting the right people on the team, getting people that had a common vision, and dealing with winning, being gracious in that, but also I think the losing, getting back into the game. I tell the story. I thought I was. In fact, I was talking to a couple of you before. I'm going around right now. I'm in the chair of the capital campaign at University of Wisconsin, and I tell a story. I went to Wisconsin out of Grafton High School, and Grafton High School was a community of 2,000 people, and the school was 178 people. And we were a farm community, and we had a pretty good group of athletes up there. I went to Madison thinking as much I was going to be the next NBA player, and Wisconsin was just a stepping stone to that. I would have been called a preferred walk-on, and I had a coach, John Erickson, and I went there and was playing, and in the term preferred walk-on, after 2.5 years, he said, "Ted, I prefer if you walk off." And I said, "Geez, this is only a 2-year hiatus. I'm going to the NBA." Well, you deal with those kind of things. I say that facetiously, but you got to get back up and get into the game. Sports taught me a lot about that, and what happened after that is I went into business school, had a couple tremendous professors in the finance area and the real estate area, and that led to my love. That's one of the reasons I have such a great love for the University of Wisconsin. I got a great education when you talk about masters. There was a guy, Frank Grainer and Jim Graskamp, and they have had phenomenal courses, and it instilled in me a love of the investment business, stock market through Frank Grainer, and Jim Graskamp, who really set the University of Wisconsin on the map in real estate. And Frank Grainer said, "You got to take a couple courses," and I did that at Madison, and Graskamp was unbelievable. I mean, all of you probably have people like that in your life, in either business people or educators. So they set me on a path. I started in the money management business because I love the stock market through Frank, and then when I had a chance to in 1984, started with a couple other folks, a company called Fiduciary Real Estate Development, which is now actually, I think, Wisconsin-based and Wisconsin building, the largest builder. We have about 8,000 apartments in the Milwaukee, Green Bay, and Madison areas. So that's a little bit about my background. I was fortunate to have great professors, make great relationships, and then partner with some great people to start Fiduciary Management in 1980 and the real estate company in 1984.
This is a story that kind of tells itself, isn't it? So I'd love to hear. I mean, one of the more famous myths about you is that you were given some money just after you graduate, and you go to your dad and you say, "Dad, I need some more money because I want to buy this crazy stock that nobody's really talking about. It's $50 a share or something like it, called Berkshire Hathaway."
Where'd you get that story?
Yeah,
I told that.
Yeah.
Well, that was a Frank Grainer, and that what you just said is true. When I graduated, my dad, if I went through Madison and graduated, which I did, I was given $2,500 to buy a car, and I went to my dad and I said, I want to borrow $2,300 because I want to buy 100 shares of Berkshire Hathaway. Now this is 1969. Actually, it was 68.
Oh.
I was having such a good time at Madison, I stayed another semester.
Yeah.
So I went I had read, Frank had given me and I have every Berkshire Hathaway annual report since 1965. And I just started reading that because of Frank. And there was just something about the way Buffett wrote and some of the things that he talked about. And we've got an hour, but I was surprised that if I talk about fiduciary management, one of the things about a good business, I was surprised that he bought a textile business because I didn't think it was that good a business. And in retrospect, it turned out not to be. He basically wrote off the whole thing. But the writings on investment was just really just grabbing. You read the books or you read the annual reports and they're like treatises on how to invest. So I borrowed the $2,300, bought 100 shares of Berkshire Hathaway in 1968, and so that was $4,800, 100 shares of the Class A stock. I went to my first Berkshire Hathaway meeting in 1970. There were about 50 people, 45 people there, and I went to 4 years following. The last one I went to was the year before the Class B. There were about 3,000, 4,000, then the next year it went to this 40,000 people. But even back then, he would get up with Charlie Munger and talk about business and what makes for a good business. And the money management business, all of you are in business or some facet. I realized what a great business money management was back then. It's a run right, It's a very high profit margin business. It entails more technology today. Back then, not as much. I went back and looked at one of the things in the fiduciary management started in 1980, so we're in our 38th year. Over 39 years, and we've had, our fiduciary management's about a $26 billion firm. We've written off 101,000 of receivables. Now, when you're in business, that's almost unheard of. So that's one of the aspects about the business that I loved. And then the stock, I went to several of the annual meetings with Buffett. I tried to sell a company to Buffett. Actually, this part you don't know. My dad told me, well, if you do the math, 100 shares of Berkshire Hathaway today is worth about $30 million.
Yeah.
University has gotten some of that as a gift from Ted Kellner and my wife, Mary. But my dad, about 10 years later, as the stock was doing very well, he came to me and said, Ted, that $2,300, that wasn't a gift, that was a loan, so I want half of my stock back. But I just was fortunate. Again, it was Wisconsin Connection through Frank to read about Buffett and to go to several of the meetings. And I've been with him maybe 6 times in various settings and events. I got a great story about that. I don't want to talk about, but so I can tell this now because you all know Wausau Homes in Wausau. So I got to think of the guy's name, Marv Schutte. So Buffett bought a company called Clayton Homes years ago in the manufactured housing area. Marv was a client. I went up to Marv. I said, Marv, you got a $500 million company. There's no succession in the company. What about selling to somebody like Buffett? He's got a subsidiary like this. And he said, no, I don't want to do it. The next day he calls me and said, well, what do you think he'd pay? I said, I don't know, but I know Buffett has always said in the annual reports, if you have a business you think it fits, send me 5 years of audited annual reports. I'll look at them, and then let's talk and have a number in mind. And if we agree on the number, we'll do a deal. If we don't, he won't negotiate. Because if you negotiate, somebody might be unhappy. So that's the deal. So I said to Marv, I said, send me 5 years of annual reports and give me a number. He did that, and he had a number, and then gave me the number, and I said, Marv, I don't think Buffett will, I think it's too high for your business. I know what he played for Clayton Homes. I think this is just out of the ballpark. So, but I put them together, sent them to Buffett. Now, 2 weeks before that, I had been at a dinner a friend of mine a friend of mine in Omaha had, and there were about 40 of us at dinner. And I kind of mentioned this to Buffett, and he said, well, send it to me. I could take one guess, and many of you, and I know Dave, others might remember Fred Kasten, who was the CEO of Baird. Wonderful guy. But Freddie was a character. And when Freddie called me, my secretary would say, it's never Fred Kasten, it was Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus. And he had gone to the dinner with me, with Buffett. So I'm sitting in my office 10 days after I send this stuff to Buffett. Secretary comes on, she said, Warren Buffett's on the phone. And I'm going, Warren Buffett's not on. And I had forgotten about the Wausau Homes. I'm thinking, oh, Freddie Kasten's calling now. It's Warren Buffett because I took him to dinner. I pick up the phone. I said, Warren, baby, how the hell are you? And he said, I'm good, Ted, baby. How the hell are you? So I said, oh, Warren, you're not going to have. Here's what happened. And he is the nicest guy. I mean, what you see, he is such a homespun Nebraska. And I said, explained to him, I said, one thing he said, you got a good friend with a great sense of humor. And he knew Baird. He knew Baird actually pretty well, because Baird, there were a couple of people there that bought a lot of Berkshire over the years. So and I gave him the number, and he said, no, the numbers, even though Marv moved the number down, he didn't hit on it. But he genuinely is a wonderful guy, and obviously built a hell of a company. I probably dwelt on that too long. But
do you know where he went to business school?
Well, Buffett went undergrad at Nebraska, but then he went to Columbia and went to Columbia, and that's where he met Ben Graham, and that was the genesis of his education.
Do you know who else went to Columbia?
Pardon?
Do you know who else went to Columbia?
I'm going to guess you.
That's right. That's right.
I've got 2 employees at Fiduciary Management.
I noticed.
That are Columbia.
Yeah, we've got them packed. It's a
Do
thing.
you?
Yeah. So Ted, the thing that we want to understand is, the business of money is is a little bit different than making things, right? So you grew up in a house where your father ran a company and he made things. It was a manufacturing business. So here you are in this new business, which is actually about understanding how to make money out of money. Help me and help the folks here with us kind of draw a bridge from the esoteric nature of making money for money, from what we understand, which is making money selling, services, selling products. It's a little bit of a leap. Help me understand how you run that well.
Well, I spent it's kind of like going back to the sports analogy a little bit. For 45 years, for the last 10 years, by the way, I'm out of fiduciary management full time. I got an office right down the hall, and I go in there half an hour to 2 hours a day, and I love to talk stocks and companies with the research team. It's in my blood. It's in my DNA. But what we do, and Buffett, again, I keep coming back to Buffett, but so many of his commentary and sayings is so critical to any business. In the money management business, like anything that any of you do, you talk about the moat around the business and the competitive edge. We're in the business of analyzing companies. And so our product is the mental capacity, mental input, and the people that do that research hopefully do it better than others. And the process that we had and have at Fiduciary Management is a little bit different than others. The way Wall Street, I think, looks at how you analyze a business. A lot of people, but a lot of companies, or a lot of people that do what we do, or look at, what's the growth, we really look at the capital deployment and how successful that capital is deployed. In today's world in the stock market, there's a lot of ways you can engineer earnings and growth and acquisitions. We really look at the capital invested in the business and how successfully that is deployed. You can do a lot of chicanery with accounting and today. It's better, but it's not perfect. When we analyze a company, we'll go in, the team will go in, we'll sit down with management in the small cap product, we'll sit down with them for a full day. Meet as many of the team members that they have to understand the products, the company, the competitive edge, the downside risks that they build into the business. We'll obviously go all through the financial statements, but understand how they deploy capital and how successfully, going back, you can figure that out from looking at the history, but then the mindset of the business going forward. That's our competitive edge. I say, and I think we have a team, and I think the record would demonstrate it, that our record is a record long-term, that is a darn good record. Has built great long-term returns for our clients, and importantly, which the market, and we don't want to get into stock, importantly, which the market has gotten away from a little bit, in our opinion today, building in the downside risk parameters that limit the down. That's the key in my business, is compiling a portfolio that when the markets hit the tough markets like 08, 09, 2002, that we have protected our clients better than most. And that is our competitive advantage. The last 9 years that's been lost a little bit, but it'll happen again in a down market. But that competitive edge of smart people looking at and buying businesses that are above average at reasonable prices gives us a competitive advantage in the down markets. And if you look at the 38-year history of the firm, I think that's documented in that performance.
So when you go and sit with a CEO or an owner, what are you looking for? What are the traits that you want to see that justify making an investment in their company? Well,
we spend a tremendous amount of time analyzing the businesses that they're in. Today, you look at the headline today, Bonton. The world. When I got in business, things changed, but nothing like today. It's a trite, overworked term, but disruptive technology. Bonton was Boston Store, Yonkers were terrific businesses 35, 40 years ago. They're gone as of this morning to liquidators. You look for, going back to sports analogy, we sit there trying to understand where the company is going, where their position and their products are, and then understand, are they in a position to have that moat around the business? What's going to compete them away? What kind of a team has that person built? Going back to the sports, what sports analogy, what kind of people has he put around he or she that are running the business with him? Importantly, we look at, because we're dealing in public companies, how do they treat their employees and the team that they've built? How do they incent them? How do they treat the shareholders of the company? So we spend a lot of time analyzing products, analyzing obviously financial statements, but then the esoteric, the things that go with that in terms of how are the people treated, how are they incentivized, how do they treat shareholders, customers, and that's a long process.
There's got to be some special sauce. You go out to dinner and you meet some new folks and you discover, oh, someone's a business owner. There's got to be some personality or characteristic that you recognize immediately and you say, I need to follow up with that person. They've got that certain spark of, what is it? Is there a intellectual curiosity? Is it a,
Well, in that scenario you're describing, it's a little bit different than what we did at Fiduciary Management. I mean, I'll jump to, I was talking with somebody earlier, I'm involved in a couple private equity companies. Mm-hmm. So when you say going out to dinner, that's a little bit different situation than Fiduciary Management. Mm-hmm. Manages, we meet businesses.
That's strictly public.
Yeah. What you're talking about, and I think in the private equity I've been involved with Lakeview Equity Partners and PS Capital, a little bit more of that is where you meet some people, you spend even more time with them because those are private investments that you're making. But the same characteristics are true there. I mean, you've got to have somebody that has a passion for the business, that has the things that I've described about public companies as well, and focusing on those things in the same fashion. It's just, it's a couple of the companies that we've invested in came out of scale-up, or that are scale-up businesses. That's a little bit different than the public arena with Fiduciary Management that we've done over the years.
Indeed. So I just want to know, if I meet you, we're walking our dogs, it's 5:30 in the morning. Do you have a dog?
We did, but not now. My daughters have 6 dogs, so that's plenty. If we want our dog fix, we go to our daughters and see them.
You can rent one. So if I meet you, at 6:30 in the morning, and it's a casual, it's a Thursday morning, not in April of 2018, but lovely weather, and I just happen to meet you. What's the thing that I say to you that's going to impress you in 30 seconds? Not impress you because of my powerful achievements, but impress you as in think, wow, that guy's onto something. He's got a spark that I'm interested in. What's the thing you'd want to hear?
About if you were approaching me on a business?
No, we're walking our dogs. It's 6:30. I say, Ted, really nice to meet you. I'm really excited because I work in a business. I've got 15 employees, and my longest serving employee just told me that her daughter was admitted to college, and we're gonna make her a Badger. Is that what's gonna get you really excited? Say, hey, tell me more. Yeah. Or is it, we just had our most profitable year? What's gonna get you excited?
Well, I've over the years I've had, in that scenario you're talking about, you're not gonna find me walking a dog at 5:30.
Yeah.
But somebody will have come up, and I can think of a couple situations where I say, hey, Ted, could we have a cup of coffee, or could we have breakfast? I'm working on something. What always impresses me, if somebody wants to talk in whatever fashion, I'm always impressed with somebody who's done a little bit of homework. They said, hey, Ted, you've done this, and I've got this. Could we have a cup of coffee? I mean, literally in the scenario you're talking, because first impressions are so huge in my view. How people present themselves, it's a little stuff. but if somebody's got an issue or a company or an idea, if they've done a little bit of homework and background and they're straightforward, and I've done a lot of that. You're talking about a first encounter, and I mean, somebody that comes up like that, I'll make that available. I've done that, actually, I probably do that 15 times a year, where somebody will come into my office with a thought or idea and want to kick it around, and particularly so where they've taken the time to find out about a little bit about what I do and my background. I don't want to just to go for a different. I just mentioned a comment about the money management. The two businesses I'm most involved with: money management, fiduciary real estate, that I talked about earlier. But I think the competitive advantage in money management is really your track record and how good you are with doing what you do for your clients on a long-term basis. In the real estate company, fiduciary management, I think, is the largest Wisconsin-based builder of apartments. We have about 8,000. But we just had a partners meeting, and Dave Warner knows it because he banks fiduciary real estate development. But we spent about 2 hours on apartments are. You think of commodity. I tend to not like commodity businesses. If I'm investing in the stock market, commodity businesses are tough business because you don't really, in many respects, control your destiny. And there's a little bit of truth in that in the apartment business. But Brett Miller, who runs that for us, we spent almost 2 hours on, he calls it the fiduciary way, the fiduciary difference. The things that we give our customers that others don't. If you go into an apartment and you don't like it, you can break that contract in 30 days. We give them amenities, I think, beyond most, if not all, of our competition in terms of meeting rooms, workout facilities, access to athletic areas. But things that, if you go into a fiduciary management apartment, it really does set itself apart from the competition with the amenities, with the quality, with the products, with the ability. If somebody wants to move, if they get a job transfer, we'll let them break a lease. We'll help them find a new apartment within our network or somebody else's. He told me, a lot of people to Barry Mandel. I'm not happy about that, but that's okay. But you create an environment for your customer that's not a really highly differentiated product, but when we look at a lot of little things, Brett and the team spent a lot of time talking about what we do differently, and I look at it, and I think that now there you can only tell, or not only tell, but our occupancy is about 3 percentage points higher than most people in Wisconsin, and I think that's a telling commentary on that, and that 3 percentage points in that business is huge profitability-wise. So there it's a people type of thing, how you treat and it's a people thing in every business, how you treat your customers. You see what Starbucks is going through. I give them credit. They're going to close every store to try and do some things differently that maybe they haven't done as well. They're making a real effort, and they're treating their customers, which is, at the end of the day, if you don't treat your customers well, you got a problem. Companies that do that today, and in the world of, and when I started out, you didn't have your Twitters, you didn't have your Facebooks. Now, one thing happens and it goes viral. I mean, I think there were 8.5 million hits on the Starbucks issue. Well, I think they're dealing with that well, because they've got to have their customers feel that they're dealing with a company that understands issues. If there's a problem, you address it, and I think they're doing it.
Quickly. So you brought up a great point, which is a competitive edge is oftentimes exactly that. It's a competitive edge. When you're starting the business, when you're starting Fiduciary, both on the real estate side and the asset management side, you had to convince investors who would be your customers that you had something, and you didn't yet have a competitive edge. How do you essentially do those sales when your offering is not yet differentiated, when you don't have the enormous track record that you have now? How do you start?
Well, I did have a bit of a leg up on that. When you said I didn't, when I started fiduciary management, I had been 12 years in the investment business. And I had a couple family partnerships that I ran and some private money. And I was also with a gentleman called Ab Nicholas, who some of you might remember the name. There's the company still here called Nicholas Company. Then it was called Nicholas Strong. And they had a track record, and I had a track record of running about $10 million. Now it was only $10 million, but a pretty good track record of doing what I was doing for the 12 years I was in the business. And with AB, I started with AB in 1973. There was a horrible, terrible bear market, 73, 74. And again, just to go back, but I think it's a telling story on this business. Nicholas Strong had one of the best track records in America in 71, 72. They split up. I joined AB, I agreed to join AB in the spring of 73. In the fall of 73, we were a small cap growth, they were down 52% in 73. In 74, they were down 27. So I'm 1 year on the job, from December of 73 to the fall of 74, and the record had imploded in 73 and then followed by a difficult 74. The commentary about rejection. AB sent me out in 74, 3-4 months after I'm on the job, talking to people as to why you should hang in there. I remember I went to Chicago. Winnetka met with a Dr. Geezer, and I'm giving him my best pitch, because stocks were dirt cheap back then. I mean, you could buy companies at below net working capital per share. I mean, we bought a couple of companies. I remember the company Midwest Distribution. We bought at $3 a share. The net working capital per share was $8 a share. I mean, it was a great time to be buying stocks, but you'd had a terrible year and a half. And I gave him my best spiel, and I was done, and I thought, God damn, this was really good. But the guy's portfolio had been nailed, and I said, I really did a good job. And he just leaned across the table from me and he said, Mr. Kellner, he said, have you ever considered the fact you might be in the wrong business? So I said, well, no, I didn't consider that. I think I'm in the right business. Well, he hung in there. But we then built, the record really came back strongly. So to comment to the question, we had a 5-year track record. Actually, it was about, at that point, 6 years. And I had, at that time, had about a 12-year record of running money personally. So we had that, and Nicholas Strong, the Nicholas Company, did go on what was called the Forbes Honor Roll in 1982, and that propelled AB's growth, and I had been a part of building that record. So I did have a track record a bit, but that's, to somebody that starts in the money management business today, if you don't have what I had, I could present that. It takes a while to build that record. So in my business, my product was only the belief people would have in me that I could do what I said I could do. In my case, I had 12 years of at least showing that. That gave me a huge leg up. But if you start a business today, it's a lot tougher, because the rules, you might have been at an institution where you built a track record. You really can't take that with you. So it's a little bit tougher today to do what I did back in 1980 in the money management business.
So in 1990, you hired a guy, Patrick English.
No, 1986.
86?
Yep.
I got to check my sources, Ted. So he's currently the CEO. And you guys obviously have had a long time together, but talk to me about the decision to hire him. What's the process? What is it like to be hired by Ted Kellner? I mean, what's the grueling...
Well, it wasn't all that grueling. Pat's history was he came from a company called Dodge & Cox, which was very similar to what we were doing at Fiduciary Management. So, you talk about first impression. A friend of mine, Pat's wife, was going to medical college at the medical college, having graduated from, I think Rachel graduated from Notre Dame. And so my friend in Madison said, would you interview this guy and help him find a place in Milwaukee? So I took him over to, has Fred Casson at Baird and Zor, and actually John Schlitzky was in the investment department. I sent him everywhere in Milwaukee. But the more I spent time with him, it's back to first impression. Any of you know Pat English, just the kind of guy you want to be a partner with. And as we talked about what he did at Dodge & Cox, I realized that there was a real mesh up with what we were doing in Fiduciary. And we were at that time, we had grown the business. It was we had started in 1980 with zero in assets. We were up to about 450, 500 million. It was a nice business, but we needed help. And so I said to Pat at the end, will you come back to me and tell me what your best offer was? and it was from Baird. And I remember at breakfast at the MAC, I said, I wanted Pat with us, so I gave him a $10,000 bump to that salary, and he joined us in December of '86. And the next phone call I got was Fred Kasten. Again, it wasn't Warren Buffett. He said, "What the hell are you doing? I like this guy. Man, that you took it." So, but it came back to, again, Pat's background, whether it's in business or sport. His background was, Pat's a competitive guy, incredibly smart, understood the process, and Pat made the process even better, and the rest is history. He joined me in '86. I made him a partner in '89, had a research in 1990, and in our business, I like to think there's about 5 Pat Englishes in our company that have the same characteristics he does, and our culture and our way of doing things.
That's excellent. So I would be totally remiss if we didn't bend the conversation to one of the things that you are most known for, which is...
most known for?
Yeah, you're particularly well known for being an incredible, supporter, sponsor. You're a philanthropist. Most of who you are is your wife, Mary, right? So, you all have names that are synonymous with scholarship, and certainly the Badgers, and with the medical school, and many other institutions. I'd love for you to share with us your sense of why being so philanthropic, being so good with a capital G in the community in which you live is good business.
Is good business?
Yes.
Well, I will tell you one of the things why we do it. I mean, my wife, Mary, some of you know my wife, Mary. Why she's married me, sometimes I don't know how. I was lucky enough to hit the lottery on that. But we both have a passion. We both have had the good fortune. I talked a little bit about my background at school and what. We've had wonderful people in our life that have gone out of their way to help us. And she's an educator. She was a teacher. She ran Next Door for 10 years. She just has a passion for kids, for education. And along our life path, we've had people, I mentioned the ones that have been instrumental in my life. She would say the same thing if she were here. And you just don't forget those people that went out of their way for you when you were in your formative years. And particularly with regard to education, which is her passion and both of our passions, but more so her, because that's where she spent most of her time, to lend that helping hand, to give that scholarship. We do, you mentioned, we have a foundation, Kelvin, and we give, they're in the process of doing the scholarships this year. They'll give 400 scholarships and we try and focus on, men and women that don't have all those opportunities. And she meets with a lot of those kids to try and positively impact their lives. We have I have a dream class. Mm-hmm. All those kids will get Kelvin scholarships. And plus, we'll support 4 years of education for them. And it's trite and it's but where you can reach out and help people and young people today and better their lives, and most of it is through education. It's just a passion she's got, and we have. And my ties to Madison are the same. I had great people in the realm of education, and I probably still many of my best friends. Those of you who went to college, a lot of your friends you probably still have in your life. I've got 7 of them that are business partners in various businesses, and one of them that I go and speak to is runs a class down in Indiana. I go speak at his class. I mean, I just had that connection with education because others that really had an impact on my life, we feel we'd like to have an impact on kids' lives and particularly on the education front.
Excellent. So, with just a few minutes left, I'm going to ask you a little bit of a wild card question. You're known for having amazing birthday parties, with incredible performers, Rod Stewart included. You're turning 100 years old in 60 or 70 years from now. It's a big birthday. Who's the dream act that you want to see perform at your 100th birthday?
well, he's dead too, or she's dead. I don't know who it is, 100 years. I got to tell you a great story about the Rod Stewart concert. But Elmer, I love music. I've been on the board of Summerfest for 32 years. I just finished up 5 years. So I had James Taylor one time and Rod Stewart. So and when you deal with artists, I know this from Summerfest, they are sometimes really hard to deal with, and some of them are pretty darn good. Stewart was hard to, not Rod, but Rod's people. So we get this deal done. Bob Babish helps me, but that night when we did it, I got a great little video. I love music. I love to have fun. I love business, but I came out dressed as Rod Stewart. Okay, so you never know how an artist is going to react. Mm-hmm. So I had to talk to Rod Stewart. Well, I couldn't talk to Rod Stewart. He had done a concert over in Ireland, been for 5 days, went to New York, went to LA, and came back for the concert that I put together. And they said, you can't talk to him, you can't talk to him. Finally, his agent, Lars, who I did him with literally on Friday night, I said, listen, I'm coming out dressed as Rod Stewart. He might not like that. He might say, no, you can't do it. And then my deal is shot, I can't. And so Lars said, well, you can do this. And it was the afternoon, it was a Saturday, it was the afternoon of the Northwestern football game. And he said, I'll run it by him, and if there's a problem, but you should tell him face to face. And I said, well, okay, I got to meet him. So I come back at 4 o'clock and meet Rod Stewart. And I said, Rod, and he was very nice. He said, I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'd like to come out dressed as you. I had pulled a gig, and I had James Taylor. I came out, was playing the guitar. Nobody knew who the artist was. And I said, nobody in here knows it's you, but when I come out dressed like you, they'll know, and I'm going to come out and sing Maggie May. And he was great. And so, and I said, I'd like to come up and sing with you. Have I told you lately I love you? I want to get my family up there. The whole thing was terrific. Well, it was my party, but it was a great time. People stood the whole time. He did a great job. Lars said, if Rod's having a good time, your audience will have a good time. And I think people stood for the 90 minutes. But I was up there, he had me up there singing with him, and I had this Rod Stewart. I had a yellow jacket, a white shirt, and a wig, a brown wig that looked like, and everything, I'm dancing, everything starts dripping, and I'm dripping, and I'm up there dancing. So night comes off, it was a great deal, and I said to Lars, Rod was leaving, I said, I want to go up and thank him, because he did put on a great show, and everybody had a great time. So about 30 minutes, he takes a shower, and he says, come on up, Rod's leaving, wants to say hi to you, or goodbye to you. And I go to him, and I said, I got a towel over my shoulder, and I said, Rod, thanks so much, you did a great job. I think everybody had a great time. I said, I hope you had a great time. And he put his arm on my shoulder, and him dripping, and everybody was dancing for 90 minutes. And he said, hi, Ted, and he's got this Scottish bro. He said, I had a great time. He said, Ted, you are one crazy son of a buck. He didn't exactly say that, the son of a buck. But he said, in your life, in business, I told people at Fiduciary Management and Fiduciary Real Estate and the businesses, it goes back to the people, but you got to create a culture within the company, and our cultures are, I think, at all our companies, we work hard, but we play hard. And if you can't bring that team together, that builds teamwork, and it builds camaraderie. If you're just going in, people going 8 to 4, and they go home and they don't have some teamwork building, then you don't. And I think it really brings, every business has tough times. I think if you built that camaraderie, everybody pulling together and has a relationship other than just the business, those friends, it gets you through the tougher times. So yeah, I've had a lot of fun with the concerts and the birthday parties and whatnot. So it's 100 years, I don't know. I love a lot of music. If I had to have my one group, and it was a great concert when they did at Summerfest, the Rolling Stones, I still like that rock and roll. So
I love it. I love it.
Yep.
So Michael Netter, who's president of the Wisconsin Foundation and Wisconsin Alumni Association. I found a quote from him, which is actually the most perfect quote to end today's conversation. He says about you, he works hard, he plays hard, and he leaves the world a better place and a more fun place. Thank you so much, Ted Kellner, for talking to us this morning.
Mike uses that quote with everybody, though, so don't.
Please do show Ted our appreciation. And we appreciate your spending the morning with us. Fill out your evaluations. Hopefully we'll see you next week at the members meeting. And have a great day.
Thank you for taking your time. If you want to have a cup of coffee, I have a little more time. I'd love to do it with any of you. But I appreciate you taking your time to come here. Thank you, Elmer. Yeah.